Good morning or good afternoon or whatever it may be, wherever you are. Welcome to video 3 of our Sustainability 3 video, Sustainability 3. Now, in the last video, we looked at how to try and teach younger children the meaning of the word sustainability. And if you remember, if we look back at the previous video, we talked about structures. We looked at different structures, and I used the analogy of seeds and plants and planting and maintaining and looking after. Anyway, how do you take it a step further though? Because sustainability is not just about the environment. We know there's economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, which we spoke about in the last video, human, social, etc. This video, I want to focus on a bit of economic sustainability. And how do you explain that? Well, it's the reason why I'm here today. And look at this. We're in the beautiful Newquay harbour, which is, you know, a huge industry within Newquay. It's massive. It's a huge part of Newquay. It's a huge part of Cornwall, the fishing industry. But the reason I've brought you here is because we can learn from industries in areas and history in regards to, were they sustainable and why weren't they sustainable? And you can get the children to understand at a higher level about economic and social sustainability. What do I mean by that? Okay, let me take you back. Now previously, I did a video for ARU in regards to the Hughes Hut, and it was about community. You know, communities can build and forge and kind of create towns and villages, etc. This time I want to use the Hughes Hut and this harbour for something completely different now. I want to talk about industries that are not sustainable and how you see they can fail, but you can learn from them through history. So for example, let's take you back about 500 or 600 years. No harbour walls, nothing at all. Very, very tiny village. There would have been a few rowing boats, what we call seine boats, dotted along the shoreline of Towan Beach, just outside the harbour. Now their main kind of work was to go out and fish for what we call pilchards, which are small oily fish, whether that be juvenile mackerel, juvenile herring, any small oily fish that could be caught in mass and then sold on. Bear with me, I am going somewhere with this, all right, bear with me. So picture this, tiny little village, 500-600 years ago, small little rowing boats, out they go to try and catch as many pilchards as possible. Now when the pilchards were brought back, they would salt them, put them in barrels first of all, put loads of salt on them, store them in barrels, and it was sent off to different areas. Some of them were sent off as far as London, all right, as far as London, because they used the oil from those fish to light the lamps, all right? Even in places like Chelmsford, but we'll come back to that, Now they started doing pretty well. They started catching quite a lot of pilchards here with their little kind of rowing boats, and a lot of people around this area went, oh, they're doing all right then there. That little town called Towan Blister, because it wasn't called Newquay, it was called Towan Blister. They're doing all right then there. How's about we relocate down there, take one of our fishing boats down there, and we do pilchard fishing as well. And that started happening, and this tiny village started getting bigger and bigger. Then someone had this amazing idea. You see, there's a really clever way to spot when the pilchards are around. So, you know, every day these fishermen and fisher ladies would get up, get in the same boats, row out and try their best to find the pilchards. But then someone realised, well, hang on, there are certain signs that tell us that the pilchards are around. For example, if you see circling birds, flocks of birds diving in, they're diving into something, well, it's shoals. Shoals of fish are there. Often from the cliffs, you know the shoals or the pilchards were there because you'd see glint, all the scaly scales coming off the fish and floating on the water with the oil from their skin, and it would cause these like sparkling kind of slicks which could be spotted from the cliff. Boom! That's when someone had an idea. Why don't we have someone whose job literally it would be to be up on those cliffs at certain times of the year, looking out at the ocean, and if they spotted flocks of birds flocking around, diving in, or these slicks with this glint, these scales coming off, they would shout from a point through a horn. The words were heaver, heaver. That would kind of alarm anybody who was around or in the fishing industry down here at the time, the little rowing boats, to quickly row out. From the top where the cliffs are, they could direct them to where they could see these slicks or where the birds were, drop the nets, catch more fish. it was a success. It was a huge success. In fact, to the point where they built an actual building called the Hughes Hut. And then it became someone's job in this community to live up there, almost like a little hermit, certain times of the year. The locals would supply them with food, water, fuel for a little fire they had in there. And if you look up here, here's some pictures of the Hughes Hut. There you go, beautiful little white hut. I mean, it's gorgeous now. It's up there. It's nearly 600 years old. We take many children up there and teach them the history of it. Anyway, let's not lose track here. So what's that got to do with sustainability and economic sustainability and how we teach children? Now listen, it might have worked back in the day and it was successful for quite a long time. However, it was too successful. Having just one Hughes Hut wasn't enough. They built 2 more in Newquay on the further headlands. So this means any time they saw, these people who lived in these huts saw these shoals of fish or signs of these shoals of fish, they would raise alarms and people would go out, and they were going out in their droves. Many people moved from different areas just to this little town called Tarn-Blistra because they knew the fishing was good. More and more people moved here. In fact, the town did so well with selling the pilchards that they started to build their own harbour. They got their own harbour funded. The people put their own money together. They said, look, let's build more houses, build our own little harbour, store our boats in the harbour, have more boats then there, catch more fish, earn more money for this community and for the people that live here. That's all very well, but it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't sustainable. The fish are not going to be there forever. It worked so well, they overfished this whole area. They literally overfished the pilchard population. Now I want you to consider this. Because they didn't consider sustainability, they went, wow, we're onto something good here. We've built these amazing huts. We've got this little harbour we've built. We can have more people come down here. We'll build more houses. This is great. We're making lots of money getting these pilchards. We're even going to build a little pony train where we load the pilchards on, take it to the local train station that takes it off to London. This is great. We're making money. Yeah, all very fine until the pilchards run out. And here's where you get a crash, an economic sustainability crash. Over those years, the children, the younger children from the ages of 6, even younger upwards, would be waiting on the shore. They would help pack the pilchards. And you know, as they grew up, their job was to become a pilchard fisherman or fisherwoman or help out. And if you only are going, right, so this is what we do here now, this is our industry. You're a young lad, you're a young girl. When you grow up, don't worry, you're going to get involved in the pilchard catching industry. But then the pilchard catching industry runs out, because that's what happened. They overfished here. It was almost the death of this little town. And by the way, Tarn-Blistra did so well. They not only built their own harbour, they built a new quay, and they renamed this village because it actually became a town. They built their own church, their own schools. It was booming, but it wasn't sustainable. They relied on one source, which was those pilchards. Now, I need you to think about that in an economic way. If you are trying to teach the children about human sustainability, environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, you can use history, but use industry in history within certain communities. Think about it. Certain areas, if they've only focused on certain industries that were not sustainable, they've crumbled, they've stopped, and you see those areas in our country and other countries almost disappear, almost fall apart. Economically, you have to think sustainable. You have to think sustainable. No, I did not learn these fact by fact. I do apologise. I've got a little book here. I just want to read some facts. Because it's all very well me teaching you about the economic industry of this little town of Newquay, but you're up there in Chelmsford in Essex. Well, I did a little bit of research. Check this out. You could use the history of where you are to teach good sustainable economics, because you're not bad up where you are. 1,000 years ago, before it was Chelmsford, 1,000 years ago, when the Romans were over, they kind of said, right, hang on, we've got London up there, but we need somewhere in between London and further down, between Colchester and London. And they built a little town, and check this out, it was called Caesar Magoras. 1,000 years ago, they knew that this little area, Chelmsford, where you are now, was kind of a key pivotal point for the future, because people were going up to London and back down from London, up and down, and you were kind of the central point. So they knew that this could be something for the future. Unfortunately, the Romans didn't know that they were going to be ejected. Anyway, in the 1100s, I'm reading this now, in the 1100s, there was a bishop called Bishop Maurice, and he built the bridge over the River Can. And what it did, he knew that if he did that, he was thinking about the future, how sustainable this town could be, it would divert any traffic that was going up to London, that was going for a place called, just check this, Writtle, you probably know what that is. And instead of going through Writtle, it was coming through this tiny place called Caesar Margoris, which became Chelmsford. So thank you very much in the 1100s to Bishop Maurice. See, you could use all this. 1199, there was a Bishop William who got the permission from the king to have a weekly market. They went, hang on, this is good. People are coming up and down through this little town of Chelmsford because of the bridge we built. Let's think future, let's put a market here. People would love it. They'd come, weekly market, it would put money back into the community. So that happened. You see, always thinking ahead. Very, ahead thinking up there in Chelmsford. I love it, brilliant. And then in 1201, annual fair. They put together a huge annual fair which diverted loads of people to your area. Once again, thinking about things which would attract people and keep that particular place sustainable for the people that live there. It goes on. So in the Middle Ages, industry grew in your area. You had skinners and tanners and a huge, apparently massive wool industry. Absolutely huge wool industry in your area. 13th century, a lot of friars came into the area and you had more churches built. And then, unfortunately, something really bad happened. In 1348 to 49, the plague. All right. However, forward thinking, you lot, probably something to do with the Romans, you became quite a sanitary thinking kind of community. You were one of the first people up there in Chelmsford, and it says it here, a quote, "Pigs shall not be allowed to roam the streets." Law. You started thinking a bit more sanitary, thinking ahead into the future, started looking at what was causing these unsanitary conditions. So, good on you up there. 1551, your first grammar school. You built a huge grammar school because you wanted something more for your town, more for your community. So a lot of forward-thinking people, thinking sustainable, thinking ahead in the future. 18th century, built a huge jail, and you rebuilt the bridge. You thought, it's great, it's diverting things to us, let's rebuild it. And then 19th century, became a market town. You officially became a market town. So that was all that sustainable thinking way back when even the Romans knew you were this kind of thoroughfare through up to London. Pretty good, actually. 20th century, library, and you built a cathedral because you did not want it to be a market town anymore. You wanted it to become a city. Now that took a while. It took a while. But I'll tell you something, in 2012, 2012, you officially became a city up there. What I'm saying to you is this. I'm trying to get over to you ways of teaching the word sustainability. The little talk I've just given you was how to teach economic and social sustainability by looking at the history of industries within areas that your school, your university, or where you teach are. I use Newquay because my schools are in Newquay, and the children can teach about the history, the industry of the history of where they live. And that ties me back into state sustainability. Use where you live, use where your school is, do some research on the history. Look at industries that possibly failed or that were successful and say, look, this is sustainable. They thought of people in the future. They thought ahead. They knew it was longevity. Now look, I'm going to put some quotes and some little kind of YouTube videos that I think are really good in regards to explaining this a bit more. But in regards to, from me, this is my last video on sustainability, so I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's made sense. The next video I'll be doing for you is something on nature deficit disorder. That's nature deficit disorder, which I'm very passionate about, as you could probably well imagine. So from me and the beautiful, beautiful harbour of Newquay, which is still here. So even though the pilchards disappeared, there's still a fishing industry here, mainly crustacean fishing, lobster, crab, but it is still here, and it is sustainable because the way they fish, and we can go into details on that. If you have any questions or you want any more information from myself, please contact your tutor. They can get in touch with me, or get in touch with me yourselves. Just ask for my email address from your tutors. Been an absolute blast. I've just noticed how crazy my hair is. I do apologise. It's been really windy and stormy down here. But from me, Carl Fice-Thomson, down here in beautiful Newquay, thanks very much and have a great rest of your day. Boom.